Hello, this is the second in a series of short videos about the events of the last 2 weeks involving the protests and Black Lives Matters and all that kind of stuff. This particular video is about the statues that have fallen or potentially will fall in the future, and there's a few little words about Antifa as well. We've all seen the graffiti, "Churchill was a racist," and he was. If you just Google it, all the information, all the evidence is there that he was a bit of a fucking cunt towards people who weren't white, to say the least. However, for the sake of a point I'm going to make now, please, just for 1 second, ignore the fact that Churchill had quite far-right views. If you ignore the fact that Churchill was a massive racist, and look at his record of literally destroying, not just stopping, but destroying the Nazis who, spoiler alert, were a bunch of fascists, right? That technically makes Churchill Antifa, an anti-fascist, correct? I'd like you to try and fucking argue against that one, by the way, guys. So, if you're like, say, I don't know, Tommy Robinson, and you really support Churchill, and you love him, and you'll protect that statue no matter what, then that means that you are also Antifa. Logically, doesn't it? You support Churchill, who beat the Nazis, which means that you, by association, are also Antifa. It's a bit far-fetched, but I'm trying to make a point here, so bear with me. However, a lot of these people who defend Churchill also have Donald Trump as one of their idols. And he recently classified Antifa as domestic terrorists, right? Which means you, bigot, who is now weirdly Antifa, are also a terrorist. And if that isn't bad enough, because Winston Churchill is definitely Antifa, that also means he's a terrorist too. Yeah, I'm using your logic against you. It's annoying, isn't it? It makes no sense, does it? So, based on everything I've just said, which of these statements is worse? A, Churchill was a racist, or B, Churchill was a terrorist who would have been tear-gassed by Donald Trump? Many people have already made the observation that many people who defend these slave trader statues and want to stop them from being pulled down have probably never heard of the people who are the slave traders before they were actually pulled down. You know, that graffiti, you do realise it can be cleaned off very easily, right? Because people are acting like they dug up the corpse of Churchill and then just started bumming it in public in front of the Queen. Calm down. In fact, the graffiti was actually removed a day or two later, and I wonder if anyone here can spot the irony coming up, because the graffiti was cleaned off by a black bloke, right? And then a group of white conservative men, including I think some MPs, stood around and took credit for the statue being cleaned. On the same week that black people are saying that they're being ignored across the board, and I guarantee you no far-right person will see that irony whatsoever. Now, there's a fellow called Paul Joseph Watson, who I'm pretty sure that most people watching will know who that is. If you don't know who it is, he's someone who pumps out far-right propaganda for money, aka a grifter, okay? His take on the statues is as follows. If they do this to racist statues with zero consequences, they do it to racist people, and of course to them, anyone who disagrees is a racist. Why is a bigot's reaction to the protests and the statues coming down, why is it never, guys, I think we should be a little bit less racist? Instead it's always, oh fucking hell, now we have to learn how to swim! By the way, it's a bit rich for Paul Joseph Watson to claim that people who disagree with him and his supporters do so by calling him names such as racist and so on. Because anyone who ever disagrees with Paul Joseph Watson and his far-right ideology is instantly labelled as like woke or far left or a commie or a million other names and labels. Oh, you don't like people being lynched, do you? Classic woke thing to say.